Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, believe it or not, December again. It keeps happening every year and we keep thinking, how the heck did this happen so quickly? This is the time of year for friends and family and maybe having a couple extra drinks and a couple extra desserts you don't typically have, and being busy, maybe not working out as much as typical, and our clothes start shrinking and our belts get tight and we have to loosen it up a notch or two and we get the elastic waistbands and all that kind of stuff. But don't worry, January is coming and the time that we really start focusing on health and nutrition and all that. So Simply Snacking is a perfect treat during those times when you start getting back on track. When you head out to the gym, it'll be packed for 2 weeks. Don't worry, after that, everyone will go back to their old ways except you. And Simply Snacking will help you stay on track when you want to have a snack or something you want to pack into your gym bag, or people who are traveling, throw them in your suitcase. You can use them for if you're traveling a lot for work, you can stick them in your glove compartment and have them there. So Simply Snacking, thanks for helping us all to get back on track in January. Hopefully we minimize the damage during December, but everyone, thanks for tuning in. Go buy some Simply Snacking, pack it away, get ready for January. Enjoy your stuff for now, but we have to pay the price soon. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. This is a dangerous one for me, man. I have a psychiatrist on, man. I'm probably going to get analyzed and he's going to tell me all kinds of stuff I got to work on and stuff. But seriously, Ignacio Cuaranta is a huge guy. I mean, he's done so much, like in the psychiatry, looking at lifestyle, what affects us right now with what we're going through with COVID. It's so critical. I'm seeing mental illness like I've never seen before: anxiety, stress, sleep disorders, all these things that people are losing their jobs and their houses, and they're not sure if they're going to get fired next week. And, they're isolated from their friends and family. And it's a horrible thing for us humans to go through. So Ignacio had a huge impact on my life too, because the night before I resigned, I was having a glass of wine or 2 nights actually, because I took a day off, having a glass of wine, talking about what matters in life. And it really made me start thinking too. It's like, let me reassess what I'm doing, working 16 or 18-hour days. Maybe I should go off on my own. And that conversation really did impact me and really played into my decision to change what I was doing and do direct primary care. So Ignacio, welcome, man. Tell people about you and where you're from and what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Brian. We have to disclose that other than colleagues, we are also very good friends, and we've met. I think already it was 2017, so it's been already 4 years since we first met. And I'm a psychiatrist. I practice here in Argentina, where I'm from, where I live, and where I graduated from the university, National University from Rosario, where I live, the city where I live. And I like to see myself as a traditional psychiatrist that has incorporated other tools into our toolkit, and incorporating metabolic psychiatry, or the metabolic underpinnings and related with the underlying mechanisms and etiology in mental health. And as you were saying, this is the current pandemic, I would say, mental health issues. And I'm so glad that to have this opportunity to talk with you and reach your audience regarding these very important topics.
Yeah, it's really critical. Argentina, are you seeing an anxiety and stress and depression disorders?
Well, I mean, if you see, this is one of the main pillars of why I think the practice of psychiatry needs a paradigm shift in the way we see our patients, because no wonder people are scared. They are afraid of going out, of getting in touch with other people. We've been dehabituated to be in close contact we see each other as a possible vector of disease and not someone possible vector of interconnectedness and happiness and mingling and getting apart, isolation, really the high increase in screen time I see among all ages. It's really taking a toll, adding up to all of the nutritional status of the population. So really, I think it's a convergence of many different factors that is affecting anxiety issues, mood disorders, sleeping issues, of course, stressing people up, the amount of stress perceived, and it's been very interesting to be in this field during this pandemic, and it's been really a challenge also.
Yeah, and lack of exercise, and also, you know, when you're wearing masks, you can't see facial expressions, smiles, things like that. That's really, it's hard to connect unless you see that facial expression. Nonverbal communication is a huge part of our human experience.
Not only that, the other day, I mean, the masks covering our faces is one thing, but also smelling the other one. I was thinking the other day, I'm sure it's a minor detail, but smelling, and it's all information that we need to be aware of our environment, and it's okay if these are short-term measures, but we really will need to be vigilant of some of the effects of this mid to long term, that we're already in that phase. So it's been really challenging to work with patients through the fear of taking control of their lives again, and trying to fix each and every one of the aspects that might have gone astray during the pandemic, or during the isolation, or during the quarantine. And here in Argentina, it was one of the longest of the world. It was like 8 months, pretty constrained, and with high level of adherence during those months. So we now have financial constraints everywhere.
Yeah, and you know, you make the point of screen time. We have a lot more screen time now. We're on the computer, but then we're being bombarded with ads, and we're looking at tickers of people dying and all those things. And mentally, it has, when you're continuously bombarded, you know, and that's one thing. From the beginning, us primary docs were saying, well, you know, we have to start looking at cases versus symptomatic cases, how many hospitalizations and deaths and things, but because if I test the same person 12 times, those are 12 different cases. So the case numbers are crazy. Assumes means sick people, and it didn't necessarily mean that. And we know there's false positives with the PCR test, false negatives, and so it's not a perfect marker. So we have to clinically correlate those things. So that's why it's hard, because, you know, I think a lot of us were looking at, well, does asymptomatic spread happen? Or are healthy people going to give it to you? And so, like you said, everyone started looking at each other as a vector, or someone who could kill them, instead of someone who can bring them peace and comfort, you know. And isolation is a huge one, especially in my seniors. I saw the effects in their eyes and their faces of even one of my patients just broke down crying, and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I'm seeing you. I'm talking to you, like on Zoom." Just to see the facial expression, someone smiling back at them. She said, "I've been sitting in my room with no interaction, like for months." You know, it's incredible.
And Brian, we talk. It's great that you bring up this point, because this is such an important topic. This topic of social connection. Human creatures. We are ultra social creatures. I mean, we need to be in touch with other people in order to manifest, and in order to express a very important part of our personalities. And in solitary confinement, it's like the worst punishment in prisons. I mean, when they isolate inmates, and for different periods of time, it's like the worst punishment. Sometimes they prefer to be hit or to be punished in some other way. And really, in seniors, especially, the lack of the social nutrition, the lack of contact, the lack of interest, the attention, exchange, it's really taking a toll, because whatever capacities that you lose, that you rapidly lose without contact, it's hard to retrain. It's hard to re-explore the outside again and start talking to people without being scared. And but I really think that it's what it's needed right now to start getting in contact again. Of course, this been going on for a little bit. We saw each other last August, and it felt very good. But there's a lot of people that are still inside their houses, at least in Argentina, especially elder people. So yes, it is a big topic.
Yeah, and it's a huge problem with mental clarity. And if you're not using your brain and engaging, and you feel like you're the only one, and everyone feels that way. That's why community is so important. That's why in my practice I do Zoom meetings and get 20 people together, and we can talk about, hey, what'd you do over Thanksgiving? How'd you survive? When you blew it, okay, great. Look, she blew it too, no big deal. So when you realize you're not the only one struggling, it is really bonding for people.
So I mean, a lot of people have been, like you said, like counting the death toll, the clock ticking with numbers, and all of the media putting out there really scary information, red numbers, urgent, all this fight, all of these political issues, and people get entangled in that. And so on the one side, you have all of the stress of what you're living, and on the other side, you have the stress of what you're not living, what you're not going through, and that's painful. I mean, isolation, it's perceived as direct pain of ostracizing. I mean, being ostracized has been really rejected by our species for the longest time. So and your body and your mind doesn't know that if you're isolated because of your fault or whatever, but it's really physically painful to be isolated and not to be in touch with other people. So I've been encouraging most of my patients, even those with at risk, to really take care of themselves, do whatever they have to do metabolically with their sleep patterns, with their eating patterns, in regards to, of course, psychological approaching, and of course all of the inflammatory markers and everything that goes that can affect the stress axis. So really, it's been a very deep work with each individual to how they assess risk and how they go out and who are they meeting. So this been going on for the last months. Now that we are kind of like completely open, it's those people that are still scared and still at their houses and waiting for something that they don't know to get out. So it's
yeah, it's the fear too. And I think there's a thing is, if you're locked in your little room in the dark watching the news all day versus going for a hike and hearing birds and seeing animals and waving to people from a distance, it's a huge difference in the psyche.
Well, I mean, there's such even though we are adapted to be in between four walls and have this short-sightedness and all of the walls really close to your eyes, but we need our brains need, in order to thrive, we need to have periods every day, ideally when your eyes are exposed to long-term spaces. I don't know how you would say, but like really wide fields.
Yeah, if you're out in the country, out going for a walk in the, you see waterfalls and rivers and those kind of things, or just being in a park, just somewhere outside.
That would be that, yeah, a waterfall or a river or a beautiful park or the mountains to go hiking. That would be ideal. But just like going outside, getting to see some nature. I've been changing my view in regards to how I convey this to my patients. I say, how much time? I'm not saying you need to go there like 30 minutes and expose yourself to the sun and walk outside, drink water and everything. It's like, how much time can you spend devoid of those stimuli and not get sick. I mean, because we need to be in nature not to get sick. It's not that a little bit of nature prevents us getting sick. So it's the other way around, not to get too exposed to being inside, something like that.
Hey, Ignacio, what kind of advice would you give people who are glued to the TV, watching the news, and watching everything on the internet, and just living in fear? What do you advise those people who, a lot of us are in that situation where it's kind of like we want to know what's going on, but then we don't want to know, and then we get oversupplied with information and a lot of misinformation. How do we deal with that?
Well, infoxication, as it's called, the excess amount of information and contradictory information, and incorporating info all the time, really, it's a sure way to get anxious and scared and magnify your own risk. But even before the pandemics, because there is a selection bias of the negative of a negative intent in the news and the media, and it's addictive. It preys on a function that we have, that we need to be alert to our immediate environment. But most of the times, the news that we see are not from our immediate environment, and it heightens our alertness, and it's very hard to put it down. So what I tell and you also need to be informed, and many people argue that you need to be informed, you need to have good information in order to make informed decisions, of course, but there's a law of diminishing returns also. You need some information, and you need reliable information, whatever you judge as a reliable information, but try to limit it. Don't have your TV on all day long. Don't be scrolling on social media all day long. And there's been this pretty popular intervention that's called dopamine fasting. So kind of like using that a dopamine fasting protocol. Like, well, intermittent fasting is a dopamine fasting protocol. It means it makes you take some distance from a stimuli that might be problematic, and regain some perspective. So when you start using again, whatever it is, it usually is a consummatory reward. When you start using again, when you start seeing news again, you'll see the real impact of whatever of what is doing to yourself, how it's changing your perspective, how it's heightening your state of alertness. And so I do work with them the real necessity of being informed about all of these things all the time.
Especially when it's out of your control. There's a lot of stuff when it's out of your control. At some point, you have to think, okay, either I give it to God or the universe or whatever you want to believe, and say, okay, I can't worry about every detail of what's happening in South America or wherever it may, or I shouldn't say South America for you, but for in a little town in Africa, everyone's like worked up about stuff, and you go, well, I don't have any control over that. I can talk to people and try to educate people, but there's a lot of that. And what you said is funny. When you were talking, it brought me back to that weekend when we talked, when we had our glass of wine. Before that, Rob Zivas gave a talk on dopamine fasting. And I remember sitting there getting stressed out thinking, oh my gosh. So for people who don't know what that is, he was talking about taking one day, you have no electronics, no phone. If someone dies, you're not going to find out about it. You're on your own in the mountains or by yourself in your room or wherever you're at, sitting under a tree, and you have a pen and a paper, and you just write what's on your heart. What do you hate about life? What do you love about life? How's your marriage? How could you make your marriage better? What about your job? And then you do this for like 2 or 3 days, and there's different things you do, and then you re-enter, and no exercise that day. You're just sitting there basically with yourself and contemplating, because a lot of times we're by ourselves, but we're not really reflecting. We want to be distracted. We're a very distracted people, right? You're distracting yourself listening to this podcast right now instead of just sitting there thinking. And so dopamine fasting. So I started thinking about that. And while he was talking, I looked at the doc next to me, and he looked at me and said, there's no way Rob does this. That's impossible to sit there. Because I was so stressed on the treadmill running, working 18-hour days, 16-hour days all the time, that this thought of sitting there for a day doing nothing, like it would just throw you so far behind that you would never catch up. It's just overwhelming. And so I thought, well, what am I doing? If I feel that way and I can't take one day off without stressing out, then what am I doing? And then Ignacio, we had that conversation. So it was like one thing after another that I saw that it just brought an awareness to me. And before I was just in survival mode saying, okay, I'll just grind it out. Okay, I got 20 years left to grind it out and I'll just be like this. I'm like, well, what about my wife and kids and friends and family? You know, you start forgetting, you know, we get a calling and then we forget about everything else in life that really matters.
It's you know that weekend we had a very profound conversations in regards to meaning also, no? It's like and each one of us has that epiphany moment, or it's not an eureka moment, but it's a deep realization where you look inside of yourself and you try to see, okay, what is it that I am doing? What is it that I am consuming? What is it that me, myself, I'm going through every day? What's the purpose? Of course, there are many different situations, but when I use dopamine fasting, of course, it has a cool name and it's getting popular and popular, which I think it's kind of cool and it's nice because it brings a real life tool to every one of us, but it's really a fast or a dishabituation technique to rest from behaviors that might have gone problematic for you and your life. So what I usually recommend, because most of my patients are active and they are working every day and they have many issues, many have their families to attend to, work and friends and whatever, social gatherings and everything. So it's kind of like, it seems like, for most of them at least, seems like anachronic to live a whole 24 hours out and try to go into a monk-like state and only have a pen and to write down and not even read or listen to a podcast or not even having a mate or drinking some coffee. I think that there are many previous stairs, let's say, or how we say, tiers that you can go through, and they will be a very good return on the investment. Sometimes what I see, you know, the mobile phone, I think that's one of the main predators of attention, and this what I try to use this dopamine fasting for is like, okay, at least you wake up and have at least a couple hours at the beginning of the day without your cell phone on or without getting into the screen, and try to go into a slower mode, trying to go into write down something, read, take some time. A lot of people don't read anymore. So we've been bombarded with fast and very entertaining stimuli, and we're forgetting those smoother, slower activities that we need in order to reconnect and nourish our brains. So it was very revealing for me. That was the first time I heard about this topic, the dopamine fasting and serotonin loading, if you recall it.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. And I think for me, if I spend, like for me now, if I have like I'm having coffee with you right now, right? If I sit down with my wife, have a cup of coffee, I'm not in a rush and like panic to get out the door. You know, just that little bit of time, if I could read my Bible or if I could read a uplifting story, I was like, okay, I'm in a good mindset. Because sometimes we wake up and it's like the mindset isn't right. Like you're like, I don't want to deal with people today. You know, my joke was, you know, after practicing for 18 years in my old practice, you know, I said I used to like be driving in the middle of nowhere in the desert. You see one house there, you're like, who the heck would live out here by themselves with no neighbors? And like after 18 years, I go, I get it. Like they're like, I don't want any neighbors. I just want to be by myself for a while and be in isolation. And there's a difference. I think there's a difference between a self-imposed isolation when you say I'm going to the mountains, I'm just going to contemplate and think, than something that's imposed upon you that says you cannot go out, right? It's just like anything. If I tell you you can never eat pizza again, all you're going to want to do is eat pizza, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, there's so much mental part of this too. And really, Ignacio, I think people are afraid to be by themselves, like just to reflect on life and to contemplate, so they're distracted. I know for a lot of times we have the news on in the background, you have the, you know, radio station, you have always something that is distracting you from really thinking about what matters.
I totally agree, Brian. And in regards to for this, whatever you do, it's they call it isolation, call it a fasting, calling physical exercise, call it work, whatever you do, if it's voluntarily, if you decide for yourself that you want to do it, it can be analgesic, and it can have this positive reward, incentive reward, which is what we want to enhance. Like, I want to do this because I want to take care of my mental health long term. I want to feel calmer. I want to reflect on things or whatever. But if you're left there involuntarily, you didn't decide to be isolated, and you're being told that you cannot go outside, it's a whole different thing. I was listening to a podcast recently between Andrew Huberman, and I don't know if you know him, and Andrew Huberman and this primatologist, I can't remember, Robert Sapolsky, and he was telling this. They are both neurobiologists, and they were telling this story about these two rats and how one had a training wheel, and they had all of the electrodes and everything, and he voluntarily jumped into the training wheel and started running, and there was another cage in where the other rat didn't have an option, so he was involuntarily on the running wheel. And the physiological effects, because when this rat number one ran voluntarily, the other one had to run because it was caged, it was limited. So the physiological response of the rat that was voluntarily running and training and exercising because she wanted was also a stress response, but because they didn't have a response in the amygdala, it wasn't a stress, a negative stress response. The physiological, the cardiological effect was different. The hypertension was different. The metabolic output was different. So it really makes it different when you do it because you want to involuntarily than when you're caged.
Wow, yeah, that's something, and I think that's it. A lot of people, and it's the same thing with diet, with nutrition. Because if you see the positive, say, look, I want to be healthier, I want to feel better. But a lot of people that struggle are the ones who say, oh my gosh, I don't want to give up this, I don't want to give up that. I really like my cookies, and so it's hard for them because they see it from what they want right now instead of looking at the long-term goal. And exercise the same way. Some people love to exercise. They go, that's my therapy. I have to do it to be interactive and have my energy. Other people say, well, I just don't have enough energy to exercise. I just don't feel like doing it. And it's like, okay, I'll do it to lose weight, but I hate it. But that attitude, that mental attitude makes a huge difference too.
And that's one of the main reasons why I spend a couple of sessions with my patients trying to have a very good chief complaint worked out and goals. Okay, why do you want to make this change, and what are your goals? And not typical goals like or extrinsic goals. It's like I try to get more into the weeds, you say, like into the
weeds. Yeah.
In regards to what is it that you really want to extract from this, like being able to go down and play with your grandchildren, having some more years, you want longevity, you want quality of life, and how that will look for you in your equation of quality of life. So this is, I think this is paramount in order because we also have people that want to lose weight to be fit for the summer or to be, but those are not most of what we see in regards to, well, try to see metabolic health, cardiological health, mental health, and really you working through all of these steps and see how this looks for each one of them. So it's you have to individualize it.
Yeah, and that's what's so important. Individualized medicine. What works for one person may not work for another person, and you get a feel. And when you know them as a human being, you kind of say, okay, here's what works for you. And sometimes it takes us a while to figure it out. Like I have some people that are very hardcore when they start. They're either all in or all out. And once they go off, they go off. They're like doing crazy stuff. And the other people say, well, if I can have a cookie once a month, I'm okay with that. Okay, cool. Let's do that then. Right. What are you going to do? You gotta have it where it's something that has to be sustainable in life, you know?
And also this brings the huge topic of lifestyle, like your podcast is called. I mean, best lifestyle interventions have to consider and have to be very adamant in recognizing what are lifestyle choices and what are life conditions in which those lifestyles develop. So I don't know if you recall, but it was part of my presentation in the stress adaptation, ketogenic and intermittent fasting interventions in regards to stress. And all of this is very important. What life conditions? Where does that patient live? Who does he live with? How often does he go outside? Does he train? Does he smoke? What options do they have? I mean, what options? What running or park? What we were saying before. I have a river right in front of my house. Okay, that's great. Go outside and watch. But many live in city and far away from the river. So these are lifestyle conditions, and we have to work as practitioners. We have to work with them to get into their best equation of life in that regard.
Yeah, and that's true. And a lot of us don't realize that there's like when I go out for a ride on my bike or go for a hike or something, I think a lot of people can't do this. Like where I live, it's safe to go out for a hike or a walk and things like that. If you're in the inner city, things change a lot, right? So you have to start thinking about those. Or some people are living and it's snowing, because like you can't it's hard to go for a run in the snow, and then different things. There's different. So sometimes you have to wait out the storm and say, okay, I'm going through a hard time. So I noticed some people, like right now, I have people coming to me during the holidays, which is notoriously tough time to change their lifestyle, and they're like, I want to do it now. Like they've had it, and they're all in right now. And so other people go, I'll start after the holidays, right? So it's one of those things where it's just getting your mind right is so important. I think, like you're saying, I think part of it is if you have to come to the conclusion, yes, exercise is good for me, and yes, I enjoy exercise. I enjoy going out and doing things, and not like dreading it and being miserable for the whole day knowing you have to go exercise that night.
Well, that growth mindset that you're talking about, it's crucial, and emphasizing the process and not only the results. Of course, we are practitioners, and results also matter, and numbers also matter, but we have to put all of that into consideration, and the mix have to be favorable for each patient. And but really, it has to do with that growth mindset, and not that fixed mindset that because you are inevitably going to fail sometime in your endeavors. But it's just taking the right step in a better direction has to be celebrated between the team. So I think
that's important. That's so important too. It's like like sometimes I've been on hikes before. I'm like, we're never gonna get this. This is ridiculous. Like, we're not going anywhere. It's like it feels like you're marching in place. And then you say, well, let's look behind us, and you look how far you came and how high you were up there. Like, look that's when we started, way down there. Look how, and then you realize it. So sometimes just having someone along that journey that says, look how far you've come. Like someone lost, people lost 60 pounds. Now they're stuck and they're so frustrated. Like, look, you're 60 pounds lighter than you were when you started, right? So ride it out, trust the process, and keep going, and so, for anything, all these things, being a doctor, you look and you go, oh, I can never do it because it's too hard. And well, once you get on that road and you just dig through and you keep moving, you get there, and whatever it is. And so I think there's so much of that. And the other thing too is there's so many people that are just stuck in a situation. They hate their job, and every day it's misery, and they go in and they're struggling, and it's not their passion, and figuring out. And then you see someone who's passionate about what they do, and it's like, wow, they energize you because they love it so much. Well, no matter what it is, you see a waiter or a busboy who just puts pride in their job, and they're just busting it, and working hard and smiling and being pleasant to everyone, and other people are doing the same job. As a matter of fact, it's funny because that was whole part of this whole weekend where my life changed was, after we talked, I get on the plane and one flight attendant didn't care at all. She was like not friendly, not engaging, just going through the motions. And, and the other flight attendant was really friendly and happy and nice to everyone. Goes, oh, if you're going to be in Texas, stop at this restaurant. Oh, we're going to go here. And she was just, oh, you nice. I love your dress. That's really, and she was so positive and uplifting. I was like, wow. One was burned out and didn't care anymore. And the other, and then the burned out one got up to do the flight, and now, to say the safety stuff, like where the exits are and all that. And you could tell she said, yeah, she's doing all this stuff, like, pointing her two fingers at the exits, and no one's listening. No one's paying attention. And she's probably thinking, look, I'm telling you how to get out of the disaster. And when it happens, you're going to be after me to help you. And you didn't listen when I told you when things were calm. I'm telling you what to do. And I was thinking, oh, that's like us doctors. We'll tell you, look, here's what's coming. You're going to get diabetes. And then when they get it, they're panicking. They want us to drop everything to help them. It's like, well, we've been telling you that for 2 years. This was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. So it's one of those things, but you can burn out because if people don't listen and you just keep saying the same things, it's very frustrating for people.
Well, it really is, but I'm really positive about what it's coming, even though it's not looking good in regards to some of the mid and long-term effects of what has happened. I mean, what we were talking before. So I have that. I try to invigorate my patients and put all of my vitality in their consultations, in their one-on-one, trying to be there for them, trying to consider those when some patients that this happened to me this week. A patient that has lost about 20 kilos is not the most important thing, but she has regained a lot of vitality and quality of life, and she feels alive. She's sleeping better. Her numbers are looking better all over the way, all over the place, and she's feeling stuck. She's feeling stuck because her rate of weight loss has diminished. And I've told her this from the very beginning. I mean, it's not what we're going to be using as the proxy, because now you're training and you're feeling more functional and your muscle mass might be increasing, and so I try to change her mind to feeling stuck. I try to walk her to feeling like it's a plateau, that it's already it's still looking very good, and those plateaux are the platforms to the next tier or the next jump, and sometimes whatever they have to do to go the extra mile doesn't fit the equation of life, because it might mean not getting together with their family on Friday night or on Sunday noon or whatever, and you have to work with them also in those environments. So I know it's a mix, but
yeah, sometimes it's not a season. You have to give yourself a regular look. Right now, I got all these things going. It's not the season for me to make big progress, and I'll be okay with that. I think part of it's this self-compassion where you go, look, you're in a tough situation. You're stuck there. Not much you could have done. There you go. You do the best you can in the situation, and then you learn from that situation. And so I think it's so important, this idea of self-compassion, not giving yourself a break on everything and saying, oh, I'm just weak and I can't do anything. That's different. But I think being able to say, look, you were stuck at this conference and all they had was pasta and you were hungry and you're meeting with the CFO of the company. There's certain situations you go, okay, I'm kind of stuck. You're not going to sit there and just stare at someone and drink water and say, it's kind of a weird situation. So, I've seen people and they go, well, next time what I'll do is I'll bring this thing that I can eat or whatever. You kind of figure out the solution to the problem instead of saying there's a problem, I can't fix it. I think that's the thing we're seeing with COVID is that a lot of us are seeing a problem. It's like, we don't know how to fix it. So everyone's kind of throws their hands up and you hear all this different information. No one knows what to do. So no one takes action.
Well, this has happened a lot. And in regards to the previous topic we were discussing and COVID and how we are all facing it, I think, and also in regards to metabolic health and weight loss or even facing a new pandemic or a virus outbreak, I've seen, much to my dismay, in that the stress axis is very under assessed. It's very really under
underappreciated.
Underappreciated. Thank you. And as a psychiatrist, I see these people trying to lose weight in the worst of these scenarios. I mean, when they are very stressed. Of course, let's say ketogenic diets, low carbohydrate diets, paleo intervention, intermittent fasting can help someone with stress, facing stress, but it depends on how you're going to implement it. Because if it's going to bring you more stress and the mindset is not, I might have the same chief complaint from the same one from two different patients, and one I can assess that they are not mentally ready to go through that because they are too attached to bread, let's say, or rice or pasta, or they have a large family where it will be harder to change. So I try to go to other low-hanging fruits, trying to improve rest and try. So
yeah, look really, at the big picture of what you can do, right?
Exactly, because I mean, we as practitioners also need to gauge if our patients are going to have a very difficult time during some of the interventions. We all know what the ideal might look like how many hours you need to go, you need to rest, what you need to eat, eating real food, drink X amount of water, have this much of physical exercise, being outside in the sun, nourish your close relationships, have friends, social connection. But then we need to translate all of that looks beautiful to the real practice, to the real world, to the real life constraints. And I think that's at least from my perspective as a psychiatrist, walking them through and seeing how they work out all of the problems and the challenges and the obstacles that might arise in the way.
Yeah, just like anything, if you for people who are not following 100%, say if you were smoking for 20 years and now you're going through a divorce and your boss is firing you and you say, well, I'm going to quit smoking now. It's like, well, this may not be the best time if this is your stress relief, because you have to find a new stress relief. You have to, if it starts to be exercise or something different, right? Because we all know when people quit smoking, what do? They gain weight because they start having suckers and candy and all this stuff to satisfy their anxiety and stress. So when we start seeing those connections with addiction and stress and food, people thought we were nuts. They thought we were crazy. And then Ignacio, when I met you, I was like, well, he's a psychiatrist and it's working for him, so we can't be that far off. And then these addiction specialists are coming out, and I was saying, yeah, there's a cross reactivity. There's a lot of people who are addicted. They're addicted to multiple substances, and so that's why the data looking at gastric bypass surgery, for instance, you see the suicide rate go up, the depression rate go up, alcohol, drugs, smoking, shopping addiction, pornography addiction, all those things go up when you because now your drug of choice is taken away. You have no choice. Now you have to find something else to fill that hole in your heart or whatever you're struggling with. And so yeah, it does have to do with timing also, and the situation. Not just it's not a good situation. Let's regroup. And I've had people do that. They're like, look, the holidays are rough for me. Let's just regroup in January. And then they come back in January and crush it because they're ready. They're mentally ready, good to go, But trying to force something when you're not ready is just not going to work.
And there was a theme in January in the low carb when we talked. It was like meeting patients where they at. So this is very important because sometimes we might be too pushy, or we want some goals or objectives more than the patient himself want to go through, and this is very important because we need to work together with them in order to see which interventions are going to be the ones that might go through at this moment and might tip the scale of motivation. And you see this incentive reward, because it's very important to understand the difference between consummatory reward and incentive rewards. Consummatory rewards are going to be those that you are going to be those look like quick fixes. Okay, like I eat this and I feel immediately the pleasure, and it alleviates and tips the balance to the pleasure side, and I feel a little less pain. But with time, with this phenomenon called tolerance, those effects are going to tip a little bit more to the pain side, and just you're going to need to consume. in order to be in balance, in homeostasis again. So in regards to incentive rewards, when you have a long-term goal, when you have something that you value that you want to recover in your life, when you have some intrinsic things that you want to achieve, and you start seeing some signals and cues from the environment and from yourself that you're moving towards that direction, the positive emotion that you derive from that is much gratifying. It has to do more with serotonin, with satisfaction, and with long-term goals. So you feel like you are going through something that is a little larger than yourself, and you see the process. So this is what I try to convey to my patients in regard to, okay, you might need this, but eventually
yeah, I love it, man. And that's so, like, my patients, the same thing is, they'll say, you know what, donuts are my weakness. And they'll say, the other day they had a ton of donuts, I didn't even want it. It wasn't willpower, I didn't want it. I looked at it and go, I feel bad one day. And they started associating, like, and the day after Thanksgiving here in the US, right, a lot of my patients this week, I had 7 women independently this week say, I felt like garbage on, they ate more on Thanksgiving. Go, I felt terrible all day Friday. I was near the toilet all day. My joint pains hurt, my back pains. I was grumpy. I had a headache. I was hungry all day. And they said, it's not worth it. Like, they made that conclusion. It's not me saying, you shouldn't have done that, right? They said, yeah, I feel so much. I couldn't wait to get back on track because I feel so much better when I'm mentally, physically, emotions. We've talked about all this stuff. So it's really amazing how much nutrition. And then and I'll tell them, you felt like that all the time before, and it was normal to feel that way because you were always eating terrible food. Once you cleaned up the diet and got your exercise and get your sleep and watch the stress, it makes a huge difference, And the other thing, Ignacio, which says how important your area of medicine is that when we talk about metabolic disease probably being the #1 cause of mortality with COVID, guess what number 2 is? Depression, stress, anxiety, poor sleep. Right, those are all right there. And I just saw a debate right before we came on Twitter. These guys were arguing about, they're talking about people getting shingles after the COVID vaccination. Some people said, well, I got it after I had COVID. Well, they're arguing, but the point is the same. When your immune system is under attack, anyone out there who's had shingles, who's listening, it happened when at the worst time. You were stressed, you're getting ready for the wedding, you're going through a divorce, you got fired, all those things, and you get shingles. Why? Because your immune system was messed up, right? Or you just had a surgery, or there's other things that happen in your life, but generally, I mean, almost always people say, oh my gosh, I was under major stress when it happened, or I was sick, or my dad was dying, and you get shingles. Like, you have to look at that your immune system goes down, and these pathogens that are sitting there waiting to cause trouble now cause trouble. So, it's not blaming any specific thing other than if your body's under attack from whatever source, you're gonna have that, and cortisol levels and stress hormones and sugars go up, all this stuff.
Exactly. And this is very important because what we've seen during the pandemic, it's an exacerbation, it's like a deepening of some of the trends that we had already been seeing from the previous years. And in regards to this, understanding the health status of the host, it should have been paramount during all of the pandemics and previous, and say, like, okay, at the population level, this is what we're going to do, and at an individual level, this is what we need to do, like a generalized intervention. And we haven't seen that, and that disheartens me and makes me lose a lot of confidence in the sanitary authorities in many places now that almost 2 years going by, because
we're not talking about these things.
And in regards to the stress axis, I mean, as a means to converge and to gauge how you're doing. I mean, there are 4, like, if we see like an axis, is like a 4 main quadrants in regards to determining the stress status of an individual. And you have the glycemic stabilization, you have the inflammatory signaling, you have circadian disruption, and then you have the only quadrant that is filtered by our mental health or our psychological traits, that it's the vital events, how you address the sense of loss of controls, the sense of threat, the unpredictability, the novelty, and we all deal with all of those things differently. So, but all of these having a good sleeping patterns in order, good eating patterns within those sleeping patterns in order. There have been many recent papers addressing this issue in regards to time-restricted eating within, like, let's say, 8 to 10 hours during the day. And so, I mean, just to remove ourselves from the fasting from 36, 48, 72 hours as the only means to get in order. Sometimes, like, daily interventions that can stabilize you is what we need first. So I've seen great results just with this frame with my patients. And of course, that's just only the frame, and then you have to start working in any one of those quadrants.
Yeah, it's like running a marathon. You don't just run a marathon. You start saying, okay, you know, like doing a 3-day dopamine fast seems like, oh my gosh, there's no way, it's overwhelming. So you go, okay, let me take 2 hours and just, I'll meditate for 2 hours, or I'll pray, or I'll think about deeper things, or I'll write down, like, what am I really stressed about? Because a lot of times we're like, at my old job, I was like, I was frustrated, but I didn't know why. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was, you know, I realized I just wasn't a good fit for HMO medicine, where you're rushing everyone through and you're seeing a volume. I was like, I don't like volume work. I want to be like, I'd rather make 1 t-shirt, you know, than 300 t-shirts, right? I don't want to be rushing and crazy where I can't enjoy the process of making that, right? Whatever it is. And so, you know, all these mental aspects, I'm so glad you joined me, because it's critical. And one of the big, you know, the big tragedies, I think, is during COVID, I've had people that I referred out for, you know, someone says, hey, I've got an alcohol problem, I'm ready to get help, I need to see a psychiatrist. Okay, we'll see you in 3 months. Like, in 3 months, that person's going to change their mind 30 times. I mean, sometimes you have to act now. And access has been a major issue, especially for mental health. People cannot get in to see a psychiatrist. They can't, at least in the US, at least in San Diego. But I've spoken to doctors around the world who are saying the same thing. And accessibility, and, you know, the psychiatrists aren't, you know, they're doing everything remote too. And so, what do we do, man? I know you're doing that, so I want people to know how to contact you, because I know you're doing consulting and helping a lot of people. If people want help, how do they get in touch with you, and how do they you know, establish characters if you're still taking patients? I don't even know.
I do some. I feel blessed that my practice really is booked, and since it's been like since it's complete, I've been more outwardly sharing whatever I'm doing at a given moment, and trying to put out there some good quality scientific information in regards to the effects of these interventions that we use in our practices, and this schema to assess patients, and this necessary paradigm shift. I've been talking in psychiatric Congress lately here in Argentina, which gives me a lot of hope, and also in international congresses. And I do think that the paradigm shift, the pandemic really came to we need to adapt to this demand as profession, as a field, as neuroscience. We need to adapt to this demand, and we need to offer a more comprehensive toolkit to our patients. We need to offer them other options. And as you were talking before, I know this is not your question, but as you were talking before, everything is so interconnected that sometimes people are already looking to me for dishabituate for an antidepressant, let's say, and so like, I'm feeling well, I'm feeling better, I've been keto, let's say, for such and such time, or so and so, and I wanna safely reduce or detitrate. This is a great topic dear to your heart, because you've talked about it, and detitration of SSRIs, let's say, and that's a great time for me, talking about timing, to intervene with, let's say, physical movement, because I know that when they are active, when they have this energy output, and they can balance their sympathetic tone with exercising, and better improving their sleep, it will be a lot easier, with a lot less struggle, to detitrate medication. Just to say that timing is important, and having this broad view in regards to as an integrative approach. And well, my social media, I have Instagram account. That is Ignacio Cuaranta. I have my Twitter account. I haven't been very active lately, but it's at Ignacio Cuaranta, and also my email address, which is Ignacio Cuaranta with C @gmail.com. Those are my three main ways to reach me.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes. Yeah, and I think about that because my friends who are the most grounded, I don't see them on Twitter. You, Ben Bickman, Jason Fung, they realize they're smarter than me, and they realize I'm not going to go fight with people every day. I want to like help people, right? Because we could get so distracted at times. Okay, 5 minutes between patients, I'm going to go on and like send out something to bug people, or hopefully uplifting people.
And we've been losing those idle moments, even though like let's not talk about 4 hours or 24 hours of cell phone fasting, but we've been losing all those idle moments in between patients, or in the elevator, in the car. We're connected all the time, and we are the first generations at risk of having, even when isolated, we haven't deprivation of solitude. This is not a term that I coined, but it's like solitude deprivation, not being with yourself.
That's a great thing. There's a difference. That's the point I was trying to make earlier. There's a difference between solitude and isolation. It's a difference, exactly. Right? Solitude, you get the peace, and you're feeling like you're enjoying that. Yeah.
And there's a great book. I have it. One sec. I have it right here. This is the next book I'm attacking next when I finish the aggression one.
Loneliness. Yeah.
And it's the
man.
Human nature and the need for social connection.
We're waiting for your book to come out, man. I'm ready. We'll have you on and talk about it.
I'm slowly getting back into it, and I'm how do you call it, macerating it, when you put something to macerate in oil.
Oh yeah.
It's going through the maceration process, but it's
good.
But
it's all marinating. You're getting it all ready, putting it all together, letting it sink in. That's good, man, because I know it's good stuff. So people who don't know this guy, I'll tell you something about him. Like when we met in Boca, we were talking about life, and he was going through a lot at the time, professionally, personally, and he had to give a talk on technical aspects and outside of his expertise in a different language, right? Like I have trouble in English doing it, and so that says something. Like, and it was last minute, you had to prepare really quickly, and I remember it was like, man, I was stressed out when you were telling me how stressed what you had to do. I was like, wow. But that just shows your drive and how much you care, and then the way you are with people is pretty amazing. A lot of psychiatrists have lost that human touch, and I see that you have that, and you're kind and decent and human. That makes a huge difference, right? That you're in the most, I call psychiatry is the most connective. What's the word I'm looking for? Where you really get into the soul of the person, right? Like in medicine, a lot of times, like, okay, here you have high blood pressure, here you go. I don't want to talk to you about what's going on in life, but it's it's very important, that connection, and a lot of people just don't have it with their psychiatrist. So I'm glad that you're out there doing good stuff. So for you, I have to ask you, man, since it's called Life's Best Medicine, what's Life's Best Medicine for you? What kind of advice or something you picked up along the way that says, look, this made a difference in my life, or something that you think that you could pass along to my listeners that would help them in life?
Well, I have to go with the concept, the broad concept of fasting. I think that the broad concept of fasting, I mean, you caught me a little bit off guard with that, but really, I do believe that the concept of the having the capacity to detach a little bit from the flow, the current of the times, having the capacity to think for yourself and to reassess and detach from the bombardment of stimuli. it is one of the best lifestyle practices that you can work for yourself. And this distance might be from something that you eat, something that you drink, someone, some places, and really having healthy distances with things that might have gone in the toxic or problematic pathway for you. I don't know if that answers your question, but I really have that concept in mind when working with my patients, and it's not just intermittent fasting and going dogmatic about it, but what I've loved and what has changed deeply and profoundly in my life has been this capacity to take a little distance from things that might be hurting me or that are governing me or are on control of myself. And it is a broad concept that all of the religions, all of the spiritual leaders, psychological practices, and the ancient medical profession always talked about these types of things under the name of the hygienism, like hygienism. They were called the hygienist. I don't. It's a tough word to, but it's what I try to do nowadays.
It's really stepping back and looking at the situation, assessing it, and saying, okay, what's going on here, right? So I think a lot of it's just like anything. When people are in a bad relationship and they finally break up, all these people say, I knew it. I didn't want to say anything. You were so deep, and I didn't want you to, you seemed happy, and I didn't want. So it's so funny how when you step back and you go, that was a bad situation. Then they see it for what it was, just like anything, relationship with food, relationship with stress or life or the media, all these things. You say, that's not a healthy relationship. Let me step back and reassess this. So many times we're in the battle, like in med school, everyone just fights through and they never think like, is this really what I want to do with my life? And then they're miserable the rest of their life because they hate what they're doing. They don't like talking to people, and they should have been a computer engineer instead, where they don't have to engage with people all day long. And, so I think that's part of it too, is finding your niche and finding your passion, what you enjoy. And you're clearly passionate. And the word I was looking for is intimate. Is that psychiatry is the most intimate of medicine, right? Because you have to know that person and what drives them and where they're struggling, and they have to talk to you about stuff they don't want to talk about, and they don't talk about with anyone else. It's kind of like being a priest or a pastor. It's like you hear stuff that no one else is going to hear, and as primaries, we hear stuff that no one else is going to hear in their life, maybe, their struggles and the stress and the depression, and for you to be able to say, okay, look, and I think there is a value of someone just laying their hand on your shoulder and touching you and saying, hey, look, I'm here with you, right? Don't worry. But when you're isolated, you can't do that. So I think we're going to learn a lot. I think that a lot of books, a lot of philosophy is going to come out of what's happening right now in this time period of isolation, stress, worry, all that. And one of the reasons I started this podcast was on low carb MD, I said, hey, have hope and faith, it's going to get better. And people attacked me for that, and I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, should I tell people everything's terrible, it's never going to get better? It's like, what are we supposed to do? And things are getting better as we speak, but it's a process, because there's so much damage that's done with fear and anxiety and stress and how we view each other and all those things. And I think there's people who benefit from separating and making you not find your common humanity, right? And those of us who say, look, let's find our common ground. We're not going to agree on stuff. You may be a different political party or sexual preference, whatever. Like, let's find our common ground. There's people that I used to not like it all on Twitter, and now I'm looking at, well, I totally agree with you on this topic, right? For sure. And other topics, I think you're an idiot, but they think I'm an idiot. That's okay. So I think it's really like finding that common humanity, and that's what we really have to dive back into.
And it also has helped me a lot to get into personality psychology. Personality psychology has helped me to understand and to see this common humanity as something really very real, and the differences in temperament and personality traits, and it has helped me a lot. And that's something that I have incorporated during the pandemic to my practice and to my personal life, of course, and wanted to also capitalize the opportunity to thank you, and I'm really honored by your kind friendship, and also my deep admiration for your character, your charisma, your personality, and your friendship. Really, you're a great man.
No, man, thank you, man. I'll record this, and when people are picking on me, I'll just play this clip back. I'll have my guys edit
I
this
really,
part out.
really
But
believe
no,
it.
I appreciate, man. It's mutual. It's great to have you on, and thanks for the great work you're doing. You're a pioneer in your field, and so hearing what your patients are how they're benefiting is really something. I think once we can figure this out and get medicine, psychiatry, we get us all working together on the same page and learn from each other. We're going to be able to help people that much more. So everyone, you heard from a great one today, and be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep up the fight. I think a lot of these things that Dr. Cuaranta is talking about is going to be helpful. So you may want to play this one back a few times to absorb it all, because there's a lot of wisdom that was thrown out here. So thank you so much, man. Thanks for your influence on me doing what I'm doing now. And I can tell you, I'm a lot happier than when we were sitting there having wine that night. So, it all works out.
Well, that's the joy of life, and your face and your smiling face and your mood and your affect. It's really why I do what I do, and so I think that's a great point.
All right,
Thank
Matt.
you.
We'll end with that, and then you can analyze me after we're done. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.